actually, interestingly enough, as a kid, even before the special effects thing, the first thing I wanted to be a ringmaster of a circus.
Oh.
I remember going to the circus as a kid, and ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and like I wanted that job. I loved that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to an episode of The Box Cutter, where we take apart an episode of Disney's Out of the Box and see if it still holds up. My name is Daniel, and my host for today is host of the Disney with the Z, Coast to Coast, Mr. Jeff DePaoli. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me on today, Daniel. This is my first time, so thank you.
Well, I appreciate you taking my invitation. So you started out with wanting to be in special effects and such at an early age. What exactly is your recollection of that?
Oh gosh, I just remember as a kid watching movies back, I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and it was a time where special effects in movies were practical effects. It was before all of the computer generated stuff that we have today. And I just thought it was super fascinating. And I can remember as a kid, reading up on that stuff. And this was before, special features on DVDs. So it's not like It was information that not everybody knew. Like you actually had to seek it out. And I sought it out and I loved it all. And for a long time, that was kind of the direction I wanted to go into, was filmmaking special effects. And although I've ended up in entertainment, and I still love those sorts of things, it's not the field that I'm necessarily in.
Right. What made you grow this fascination with Disney in particular?
Oh gosh, for me, I think it must have been Walt Disney World. I definitely have memories as a young kid going to Walt Disney World. And honestly, it kind of ties into special effects. If you think of rides and attractions in the parks, there's so many practical effects in them. In fact, I've never really thought of this, but that's kind of where practical effects live these days, right? Because so many movies have gone to purely digital effects.
Right.
And yes, there are digital effects in rides these days as well, but practical effects exist as well, even in newer attractions. So, I just kind of fell in love with the experience of a theme park. And I would definitely say it was the parks that made me the huge Disney fan that I am. And then eventually learning about Walt Disney and the fact that there was this man that created all of this, and, diving deep into that history and the respect for that and what he created.
Besides, movies and special effects as a kid, what other, interests did you have as a kid? Like, what kind of shows were you into?
So as a kid, I grew up before Disney Channel was something that everybody had. So I was much more of a Nickelodeon kid growing up. So I loved like The Secret World of Alex Mack. I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark? Beyond Nickelodeon, I was obsessed, still am obsessed with the Rosie O'Donnell Show. Loved that. So yeah, but Nickelodeon was a huge part of my childhood. That's the type of stuff I like.
Yeah, I can understand the appeal of Nickelodeon in the 90s and early 2000s. It was a lot of diversity and a lot of empowerment for kids of rebelling and, just showing and representing the diversity. But I feel like Disney kind of caught up with them in the late 90s, early 2000s is where they started showing that diversity. But then they fell off, at the mid of the 2000s when they started to realize, oh, we can profit off of actors who can also sing and make shows around that, which is kind of why I kind of stopped watching Disney Channel around the time, like around 2006 or so, because...
I mean, you probably aged out of it as well, which happens. They used to give us those free trials for like a week of Disney Channel, and oh my gosh, would I devour those free trials. And I just remember back then, Disney Channel and Nickelodeon had two totally different vibes to them. You would never put one on and mistake it for the other.
Right.
Whereas these days, I'll put on one or the other, and I won't know the difference. Just
Right.
because they have such a similar look, such a similar style. They're going for a similar type of audience. I liked it better when there were two totally very different things, and both were great for their own reasons. Now I feel like they're chasing the same audience and the same age and everything, and I don't know, it's just less fun. Gosh, bring me back to MMC, the new Mickey Mouse Club, and
Right.
all of that great stuff that was on Disney Channel. I loved it.
Right. Which is kind of like why I love a show like Out of the Box, because it's like, it makes sure to have good representation and like variety in its cast, and but there's also like a just have this very comforting and like uh the sort of tone of like, you can do it too, and stuff like that, which is why growing up I really loved the show, because it was just genuine. It wasn't trying to come off as something that I wasn't.
And they have the full series now on Disney Plus, it looks like, right?
Almost. There are
Almost
3
there.
episodes that got rotated out of syndication, and they're considered lost episodes now.
Oh, are they controversial, or what's the
No,
reason?
they're not controversial. It's just a simple thing of they did similar episodes in season 2 that
Mm,
the season 1 episodes were made redundant. So they just stopped airing them, and so they're considered lost because they're not even on Disney Plus. Um,
interesting.
and like, there's a little bit more evidence to prove that, because one of the actors, there was a news article published saying that they did 7 episodes, but they only appear in 5 episodes.
Mm.
So there's 2 episodes that aren't listed that they're in. I'll be doing an interview with them later on this month. So
That's cool.
uh,
Yeah, that drives me nuts. And like, if I'm a fan of a show and I can't have a complete collection of it,
right,
I know The Simpsons have removed an episode or two for
right, the Michael
controversial
Jackson.
reasons. Like, yeah, and I don't know. It just the erasing of history bothers me, and
Right.
I'm all for putting if you need to put some sort of censor at the beginning, like, hey, this is why this is wrong. This
Mm-hmm.
is problematic for this reason. But like for historic purposes, I find it very important to
Right.
not erase it. So it's too bad that it's happening more and more and more these days.
Yeah. It's for me, I just don't really understand why they wouldn't allow these episodes on streaming, when this show has been off the air for more than 15 years. This show was considered lost media for the longest time. Like, there was very little home releases. It stopped rerunning after 2004, I believe. And yeah, there's 3 lost episodes now. So it's definitely a niche, but it's one I can, I feel like I feel very confident in talking about.
Yeah,
So
well, it's interesting. I had never even heard of it. So I had definitely aged out by the time it was on. And you know what? Good for you for like, taking this thing you loved growing up and keeping it alive because I am now one person at the very least that had never even heard of it that you've introduced it to, and I'm sure it goes way beyond just me. So, good for you for keeping it alive.
oh, thank you. So the episode is called Circle Circus. Have you ever been to a circus?
Oh yeah, I love the circus, and I know that they're even controversial these days due
Oh
to
yeah.
animal cruelty and stuff like that. But so yes, I definitely love the circus. I love circus history. There's a really great documentary about a circus called Circus. Are you familiar with the Big Apple Circus?
I'm not. I really am more into like the Cirque du Soleil type
Oh,
of
okay,
artsy fartsy, because I used to be a dancer in
okay.
college. And so I did a lot of like research, and I'm really into like that type of like more of the theatrical Cirque du Soleil.
Okay. Well,
Really traditional.
if anybody listening is interested in a kind of what it takes to put on a traditional one ring under a tent circus, this probably came out about 6-7 years ago. It was a
Hmm.
PBS documentary, actually a little longer than that.
Oh
um,
really?
but it was a PBS documentary called Circus, and it was like 6-hour long episodes,
Hmm.
and it was just behind the scenes of putting together a circus and all the drama, and it's really fantastic. I love it quite a bit.
Well, when you mention PBS, then it's definitely a really informative documentary.
Yeah, no, it's really good, really, really good.
So I'll probably make sure to check it out because most documentaries kind of have like this underlying plot line that's kind of like drama filled, but it's kind of
Oh,
like
there's drama in this for
yeah,
sure.
but I feel like it's more like raw as
Yeah,
opposed to like underlying plots like will they, won't they, or this person's conspiring against this person. Like some documentaries do, like
yeah,
they provoke.
yeah. Check it out, Circus.
Circus, Circus.
Yep.
So the episode starts with Tony practicing his hula hoop being, but is having a hard time. And the reason why is because the hoop is just too small for him. Like you
Hmm.
could definitely tell it's like way too small. It barely fits like around his waist enough for him to hoop it. But he notes that if he keeps trying, that he'll get the hang of it. And speaking of hula hoops, it was actually one of my biggest talents as a kid. I
Oh,
used to
that's
be
funny.
able to, uh, you know, jump and walk around and spin around while hula hooping at the same time. So, being able to hula hoop around my waist. I just used to be able to do all these really cool tricks with it.
Yeah, I definitely never had that skill. I was never a good hula hooper. Definitely tried as a kid,
Hmm.
never got the hang of it, never cared enough to keep practicing. As the kids in this episode do, they apparently wanted to be good hula hoopers, so they
Hmm.
keep practicing. Me, I was just like, not over this, and moved
Right. Right. So like they have, Vivian and we have Vivian, Dane, Alicia, and Matt come into the clubhouse and they see Tony practicing. But then I noticed that when Vivian's come in, she practically falls over and like she's right behind like two of the kids and like practically like falls on top of them is what I noticed. So
on.
um I don't know if it was the first take or second take, but it looks like it took more than one take because she looked like she was about to fall on top of those kids. So they're seeing him practice, and so Matt and Dane, they see how much fun it looks, so they join Tony. But Alicia is a little reluctant to join because she doesn't know how to. I don't think it's necessarily she doesn't know how to. I just think it's more of she's just looking for attention. Because you
Perhaps.
you can see in like after they come in and they're all hula hooping, she does it for a second and then she puts her arms down. She's got the rhythm and then she just puts her arms down. I kind of noticed her character is this person of, oh, I can't do it, give me attention. She's very smart,
She
and she's
needed
very
encouragement.
sassy, but she is very much an attention seeker, is what I.
Yeah.
So, even though she can't hoop, everyone finds other ways for her to join, like, using their arm or, having two people go inside of it and hoop, spinning around. She could have also, done the skip it method, when you put like a skip it on your foot. That was my
Hmm.
favorite one. And there's, yeah, plenty of other ways. Which reminds Vivian, I know a hoop song that we can all sing. How many, I'm very impressed with the repertoire of these characters of how many songs they can sing or come up with on the spot.
Their special skill. They have a Rolodex of silly songs in their heads, I guess.
It's music time.
So the first song is called I Love My Hoop. And it's one of my favorite songs because it's like such an earworm of a song. It's super lively. It's very catchy. It's got this very piano rock, like Little Richie type of tone going on. And it gets across the idea of what you can do with the hula hoop. You can twirl it, you can toss it, you can jump in it.
Do they still sell hula hoops? They must. But like, I'm trying to think the last time I've seen a hula hoop in a toy store. Not that I spend much time in a toy store, so I'm sure they do,
They
right?
do. They sell them at like they sell the cheap ones at the dollar store, but you can still like see them at like Target, at like
Okay.
Walmart. They're still in like the little cardboard thing though.
What do they charge for a hula hoop these days, I wonder?
Probably like $2.99, $3.99.
Oh, okay, they're still super cheap. All right.
Yeah, it's just like a tube of plastic with like a rocket.
Well, that's what I figured. So I was, but I could totally see it being one of those things where they're like, let's charge $10 for it and get like a 99% profit on this thing.
Right. They can just sell it as a vintage toy. Let's
Yeah,
sell it as a vintage toy, boys, and we'll sell that for $10.99,
yeah, there you go.
And but it's one of my favorite songs, which is why this episode, I guess, is kind of like my personal favorite, but it more or less because of this song in particular, because it's just like so. As a little kid, I'd probably really love this song because it's like, oh, really exciting, and it's like gets you going, and I'd probably be singing my parents' ear off with the song, you know. So as they're singing, Alicia, Jane, and Matt all drop their hoops. Coincidence. And they make a 3-ring circus, as Alicia points out.
Mm-hmm.
And this has everyone talking about how they love the circus. I've been to the circus once. Everything else is...
Wow.
Yeah, I've only been to the circus once because in Southern California, they're not too common.
Okay.
And so I just remember just being at one once, very loosely though, just like the big top and like sitting on the aluminum benches and
Well, it's crazy to me how these days I grew up with the Barnum and Bailey, Ringling Brothers Barnum and Bailey Circus, which toured, arenas like sports arenas and stuff, and that's what I grew up with. And just a few years ago, like they went defunct. They
right.
Feld Entertainment, who produced them for the past, I don't know, 50 plus years or whatever, decided to get rid of them because it is. At first, they got rid of their elephants because that was very controversial, and then the whole thing just became controversial, and they eventually just ended it. And so, I mean, that was I could be factually incorrect here, but it felt to me like that was the biggest circus in the United States for sure. And
the most notable, yes.
Oh yeah, and they did huge venues. So when that went away, like that was definitely like whether on either side, even if you were like very anti-circus, you can't deny the fact that that was like the end of an era.
Right.
So it was
like their only living legacy is a box of crackers.
Yeah, right. Growing up, I loved when the circus came to town.
Do you feel though, with the development of technology, the culture, like our old culture and values of like how we would go to the circus, it would be like this big grandiose event of the circus coming and everyone in town would go. Do you think that that culture and those values are just being replaced by this homogenous culture of technology?
Well, yeah. I mean, let's face it. Circus, if you look at it, is probably a bit basic to people at this point, right? Like, it takes a lot more to impress a crowd.
Right.
So, yeah, I get why. And you even saw it even toward the end of Barnum and Bailey and Ringling Brothers. Like, they were using a lot of technology. If you looked at, their production value and lighting and lasers and stuff like that, they were introducing all of that stuff into their show because they had to, or else they would have died a long time ago. I mean, animal cruelty aside, I actually think it would be interesting to see a super traditional circus with none of the high-tech gadgetry. I think that could be kind of interesting to see, and retro and kind of like a time machine sort of thing.
I've heard like how certain circuses have the technology to make like these holographic projections of circus animals.
Yeah, I don't want that.
It's interesting, but it's kind of like it just takes away that experience of being like near these majestic animals that are beautiful to look at, but are also just as dangerous.
Well, that's the argument, I think, with all of that stuff, right? With places like a SeaWorld or a zoo or a Disney's Animal Kingdom or whatever. Like, there's the argument that this is not how animals should be treated. And
right.
I don't disagree with that. But at the same time, I always go back to, well, so many zoologists that you speak to talk about the first time they saw an animal at a zoo or at a circus or whatever it might have been.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what inspired them to want to study what they study.
Right.
And the reality is a lot of if some of these animals weren't in zoos or wherever they were seen,
Mm-hmm.
um, who knows how many fewer people would be interested in studying them,
Right.
because we'd never see them up
It's
close and
it's
personal. And
definitely a double-edged sword.
yeah, for sure. In fact, I think I've heard the story about, when they were the concept of Disney's Animal Kingdom, and
Mm-hmm.
like there's a big production and board meeting, and top people at Disney, they're like, well, why are people going to find that interesting? And from what I understand, what they did to really prove how interesting it could be is they brought either a lion or a tiger or some big cat into the room, into the conference room, and like everybody just stopped and stared and was like, oh wow. I was like, this is it, man. Like, listen, we don't have to necessarily build a giant ride for people to be interested. It's
Right.
This is interesting.
It's
So,
just the idea of seeing something that's not human,
yeah.
and being so close to it. Like even with the kids that I facilitate, they will literally stop in their place to see a squirrel because
Yeah.
it's like, they're not looking at another person, they're looking at something that's a living creature that isn't a human,
Hmm.
that they don't normally see. Like even a dog, it's like it's just not everyone has a dog, but it's like it's just this
Yeah.
fascinating thing of seeing this other living creature and how it behaves, and um, it's just like you just want to soak it in and just see how they behave, and how they act and
Yeah.
learn and such.
Yeah, and
So
seeing that in person versus in a documentary are two totally different animals, no pun
right,
intended.
it's like going to a concert and listening to a CD.
Exactly. Totally.
So yeah, so the three-ring circus, they're talking about it, and Dane just starts deciding, oh, let's be ponies. And I'm just, as a little kid, I never thought of deciding to pretend to be a pony. I'm just gonna be very honest about that.
I probably did. I think I did pretend, not necessarily a pony, but
Maybe
animals for sure.
maybe it was the fact that he said ponies
Mm,
versus like, oh, let's be horses or something. And maybe it was just that because as a kid, ponies is like kind of like used more as an insult, when you're talking down to like another kid, like, oh, go play with your ponies or something. So that's how,
interesting.
like, ponies. Like I get that there are ponies which are like smaller than horses, but like just hearing the word pony when like you're pretending to play horses, like it was like, okay, that's a choice. So while the boys are pretending, Alicia mentions to Vivian her favorite attraction, which is the lion tamer. So Vivian remembers she had a picture, and goes to grab it out of her picture box.
Let's jump into the picture and see what we can see. It's time to go exploring. Jump on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, jump!
And this is probably where you were like probably cringing at the special effects of how they jump into the picture, and you can evidently tell the green screen was there.
I mean, listen, it's all I would expect it to be, right? Like, what
Mhm.
year was this show?
1998.
Yeah, like I mean, it's nothing I wasn't expecting, you know.
If you could recreate that, how would you envision them jumping into a picture?
Oh gosh. I mean, these days CG is definitely the way to do it, and green screens. My guess is what they did
Hmm.
isn't necessarily wrong. It's just that's the thing that's so interesting about CG and computer generated images on screen and
Hmm.
green screen and stuff like that. It's all the same basic concept. The difference is how much money are you going to invest into it, right? So money gives you more time to do it. More time you have, the better it can look.
Hmm.
So what they did I could probably do on my iPhone these days. You know what I
Right.
mean? Like it's just they did it, one of the cheapest ways possible.
Hmm.
So the way that they did it isn't wrong. It's probably if you wanted it to look good or realistic, it would just be more money invested so that they had more time to make it look good.
Right. So yeah, so they jump into the picture and they see a tamer and a lion practicing jumping through a hoop. But the lion can't jump through it. All he does is tumble to the ground. So Alicia gives a pep talk, relating her experience of not being able to hula hoop because she's afraid she'll get dizzy. I've never heard that before. Oh, I don't want to hula hoop because I'll get dizzy. It's okay. So she's just trying to pep, pep the lion to be able to jump through the hoop. So she whispers to the lion tamer about lowering the hoop so that way it can encourage the lion to jump through it. I like that because it kind of shows kids, you shouldn't have to, jump off the big diving board. You should be able to learn how to, take it little by little, like, jumping into a pool and then maybe jumping off the low diving board and then working your way up to the high diving board eventually. So same thing here with like the lion. He wants, he's afraid because it's kind of high. And so they lower it so that way he can get used to doing it. And then eventually, if he practices enough, he'll be able to jump through a high hoop. They get back to the clubhouse and they tell Tony and the boys all about, helping the lion and the lion tamer being able to jump through the hoop and, talking about how if he practices, he can do anything.
It's music time.
Which brings us to the second song, which is probably one of my least favorite songs. It's very preachy. It's very slow. I don't know. It's very empty. That's how I feel about the song. It's like, oh, you can do it. I don't know. And I guess it's a show for kids. But, if you got a song like I Love My Hoop.
I love that they have like one of your favorite songs and least favorite songs in the same episode. That's
right.
Great.
That's why I was like, this is one of my personal favorites, but it's not like one of the best episodes.
Sure.
So yeah, it's just that. It's just if it wasn't so preachy about it, I'd probably be fine with it. But it's just a little too like over the head of, oh, you can do it if you keep practicing, and it might be hard, but if you keep doing it, you can do anything. So, with all the talks of hoops and circuses, Tony suggests that they make up their own circus, a Circle Circus.
It's arts and crafts time.
For the arts and crafts, they have circus costumes and props. So they use watercolor paints to make a clown face.
Okay, we need to take a second here, just talk about the girl who painted the circle on his cheek. This is a ridiculous statement to make. That was one of the most perfect freehand drawn circles I've ever seen in my life. It was so perfectly done. I was actually impressed. It was like, man, that was good. So well done. But then the second cheek, you can see she starts it, and you can tell that it's really not going nearly as well. Right. And they immediately cut away from it. And that made me laugh. I was like, wow, she really did a perfect circle and then messed it up immediately on the second cheek. It just made me laugh.
Right. So Matt's being made into a clown. So Vivian's helping him by painting his cheeks and painting his nose with watercolor. I like that, you could see it's watercolor versus like a jar of paint. Because, a kid sees something and then they'll want to do it, but they'll want it exactly how it's on TV. So, you see this tray of watercolors and as a kid, you'll get your watercolor paints. So I at least appreciate that they're showing what kind of paint it is versus like, oh, a jar of paint. Because then they could just go find a jar of paint and then it might be, not healthy or it might be toxic. So I appreciate the little details like that. And Tony is helping Dane by making some paper chains so that way he can be the world's strongest man. So I think that was the main arts and crafts, was the paper chains, and the costumes were like a secondary to that. So, they take like these strips of paper and they tape them together and they make links of chains and all that. So while Tony and Vivian are helping Matt and Dane, Alicia decides to get their costumes. while Vivian's finishing up Matt's paint, this is what I liked about Matt. He looks in the mirror and he, like, in the most innocent kid way, he's like, oh, it's perfect. I'm just like, it really melted my heart just to hear that. I'm like, oh.
Was that the clown or the chain?
Yeah, that was the clown.
Yeah,
he's
no,
like, it's perfect. So she gets him this polka dot oversized shirt, which I really like. I'd probably buy myself a shirt like that and unironically wear it. And she gets these 2 foam balls for Dane to put under his sleeves to look like muscles. And, it's very practical. It's showing, it's emphasizing its theme of practicality and, being able to do these things at home with the things around you. So, while they're finishing up their costume, they ask Alicia, well, what do you want to be? And she's kind of like, well, I kind of want to do the tightrope, but, it's a straight line, not a circle. Fishing for the attention again.
Man, you love that character, huh?
She's not my least favorite, but, I've kind of gathered she's kind of like, her character in the show is kind of like, plays it up to get the attention from Tony and Vivian.
Funny.
But my favorite in this episode was Matt, actually.
The clown?
Yeah, the clown.
Yeah, I thought he was great. Yeah.
Yeah. So while they're talking to Alicia, she's just kind of discouraged because, like, oh, it's a straight line, it's not a circle. So she's like, well, what if you were Humpty Dumpty? And
that was very random to me. Yeah, this I didn't quite get where they were going with it.
Right. But then again, kids come up with the most random thing to imagine. True. So, I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibility of like, oh, you can be Humpty Dumpty and you can be circular and you can walk tightrope, instead of being like, well, what if you walked a circular tightrope?
Yeah.
So Vivian poses the question of what would happen if Humpty Dumpty happens to join the circus?
Story time.
The story is Humpty Dumpty and the Circle Circus. I really liked the story. It had a beginning, a basic plot. It had a middle where they were trying to get Humpty Dumpty to join, and then a climax and a resolution. So it was definitely one of the better stories because it was a full, complete story. It was a little long, but I was definitely invested in like wanting to see the story through to the end.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say it's one of the better story that they performed. But what are your thoughts on it?
The thing I was just kind of baffled by the whole Humpty Dumpty thing. I was like, where did this come from? And they even say, well, Humpty Dumpty isn't a circle. He's oval shaped. And one of the characters is like, well, he's circular. I was like, okay, like we're really stretching this. We're going from, there's tightrope isn't a circle, so let's do Humpty Dumpty in a tightrope, and then he's not even a circle, he's an oval. Like, so I don't know.
The ironic thing is that they say, oh, Humpty Dumpty is good at balancing.
Yeah, he falls off of a wall.
Exactly. So yeah. But I thought it was good. I mean, it might be odd with the Humpty Dumpty aspect, but it is one of the better stories in my opinion.
Alrighty.
So everyone starts to put their costumes away and they talk about what their favorite part of the story was. And then Tony, hamming it up before they leave, he said that there's one more circle, the circle of friendship. I work with kids. They'd never, fall for that. Maybe 20 years ago was a different time period, but even as a little kid, I'd be like, yeah, this is kind of embarrassing. Vivian takes the kids home, and with Tony recounting all the fun they had with circles and hula hooping and just practicing to get better. And that was Circle Circus.
So the kid who played the clown, I really liked. I actually thought he was a fun little young actor because, he didn't feel like he was acting. These were, I will say though, just across the board, they were all pretty good kid actors.
Mm-hmm.
They seemed like little professionals, but at the same time, not like obnoxious professionals.
Right.
So I think the casting of the show is pretty darn good.
Mm-hmm.
You know what a lot of the music reminded me of on this show?
Mhm.
Honestly, it's been stuck in my head since I've seen it. But did you ever watch Bear in the Big Blue House?
Yes. The funny thing is, they were both filmed in the same studio where Sesame Street was filmed also.
That's so funny because that song at the end, goodbye, goodbye, my friends, goodbye.
Right.
And
From
now it's time to go from
hmm
Bear in the Big Blue House. I don't know why. I kept getting those vibes from the
hmm
music I was hearing on this show. So,
I really like the goodbye song in Out of the Box because it's like it's engaging. It's a two-way goodbye versus a one-way because you're both singing and then you both do the snap clap crackle pop Rice Krispies. So
I love during the opening credits
mhm.
how you see them like building, these box towers and stuff in the art,
Right.
which first of all is super true that like, kids, there's always that thing about why'd I buy this kid this toy? Like they're more
Mhm.
interested in the box than they are the toy. And I thought it was fun when they built this tower and you see these kids go into this box tower and then they cut to like the interior, quote unquote, and it's
Mhm.
the set of the show. It's like that's just such a fun idea,
It
because
is.
when you're a kid, you do build these things and create these things in your mind, and like we look back at it as an adult, you're like, my gosh, it was so magical to me in that moment. And now you're looking like it's complete crap, but in that moment, it didn't matter to you. And I
Mhm.
think that that's so cool. That's just such a fun
Right.
thing, and I thought that was a fun way of showing that.
Out of the box.
Oh yeah,
As anytime I see the words out of the box together in my mind, I'm just singing the song.
yeah. It's funny how when you grow up with a show, it
hmm
stays with you forever. It's so funny to me. Just gosh, I can recite lines and remember every detail of movies and stuff I grew up with. And you could
hmm
ask me about a movie I saw last week, and I'd be like, "How did that end?" I'm not even quite sure.
Right. Yeah. So I guess our standout goes to Matt, the Circle Clown.
Yeah, Matt, get him on the show. I want to know what he's up to now.
He has his own haircutting business now
Oh, good for him.
called Maddie's. He just opened it last month in New York.
Last month during a pandemic?
Yep. He
How's
charges
that?
he charges $60 for 30 minutes.
How is that business going? I wonder.
I guess pretty well because I see on Instagram everyone's promoting his haircutting. He's pretty good. Pretty good. He started when he was like 16 or so.
Wow.
He still acts. He was on stuff like Orange is the New Black, like minor roles.
Oh,
He was on HBO's I don't know, no, it was Stars Powers.
okay. So
He was
he's
on
doing like current-ish stuff. That's cool.
Yeah, he was on Powers. He got killed off.
Oh,
And yeah, so he's doing haircutting and he does some indie filmmaking. So yeah, he's definitely keeping himself busy, but also grounded in terms of like not trying to um, flaunt that he acts. So
yeah. Interesting.
he's definitely one of those kids. Like if I was his age back then, I'd be like, oh man, he's so cool. Because he just seems like the type of kid you ride bikes with and just play, baseball and, go down by the creek and catch frogs or,
You
just.
gotta send him this audio from this episode that we're recording and be like,
Mhm.
listen, like you're our favorite. You need to come do the show.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and give our final verdict then. So let's.
Wait a sec. Is there an episode of Out of the Box about like haircuts or hairstyling or anything like that? Because if there is, you gotta get him for that episode.
I think in like season two. Season two is more
Mm.
like specific, like, oh, going to the dentist, oh, being on a farm, going out to eat. It was a little bit more situational and specific with stuff. So maybe there might be a haircutting episode. If
You
not,
gotta look into that.
I definitely will get it. I'll try my best to get him on an episode that he was featured on.
Yeah.
Uh, so let's just go ahead and get to our verdict then. So let's go ahead and start with the theme of circles. Do you think that is a theme that kids are still would still be interested in learning about, or do you feel like it was of its time?
No, I think it's always been stupid. like I it's a weird to me, I think circus would have been
So yeah, I think Circle was the main theme, and then Circuses was the underlying theme of the episode. I feel like if it was just Circle by itself, it fails. But I feel like with the theme of circuses, the circus theme carries the circular part of it.
Yeah, I think they like the way Circle Circus sounds more than they thought. Just the tightrope choice was really weird. I'm like, it has nothing to do with circles. And then Humpty Dumpty. I don't know. They didn't commit to the theme, is what I would say.
Right. I just feel like, it's interesting, but I feel like it's just an outdated concept. Circuses are, they're not as accessible as they used to be. And like kids aren't talking about clowns and strong men and all that stuff these days anymore.
Yeah, it is a bit of an archaic art form at this point.
So I guess it just doesn't hold up. The music, then, let's go and talk about the music. The music is, I love my hoop. You can do it. I can do without. But overall, I'd say it's catchy. It's harmless. There's nothing wrong with that. I feel like it still would hold up.
Yeah, as I watched it, I didn't have any strong opinions about the music. I didn't dislike any of it, but I can't like remember any of the songs thinking back. And I just watched it yesterday, so it's not like it was long ago. So none of them are stuck in my head, but I didn't think any of them were bad as I watched it.
Right. They're not like, the I Love You song from Barney bad.
Yeah. I love you. Yeah. Now that, talk about an earworm.
Right. So the music would hold up. Let's go ahead and talk about the arts and craft then of face painting and paper chains.
Okay, I love the paper chain thing because I remember doing that as a kid. For some reason, for Christmas with red and green every other.
I remember that too.
Yeah, and so I actually like that, and I think that it's a fun thing to do with kids and a fun decoration. So I like that, and the face painting I think was cool as well. So that was probably the best part of the show, in my opinion.
Right. Normally, I don't like when they try and put like multiple arts and crafts into one segment. But for this episode, I'm okay with it. Of like, they're showing like, she's using watercolor, then painting on her face to look like a clown, and then Tony showing, oh, let's make paper chains now. So, they spend time on both of them to show how to get it done versus doing a montage, which is like my pet peeve. They do montages sometimes, and it's one of my least favorite things because it's like you're doing nothing but showing us what you're doing. So, but the arts and crafts, then it definitely holds up. It's a little messy with the base paint, but definitely something that a kid would be totally into doing. So, and the story then, for me, one of the better stories that they've told on the show, beginning, middle, and end, a complete story. Just the Humpty Dumpty thing is ironic, but still pretty good. So I'd say, in my opinion, it holds up.
I like the theme of circus for sure. I think that that's a fun concept for the story. I didn't love the Humpty Dumpty thing, but yeah, it holds up. It is what it is. It's not like it was like this is horrible. It was just like this is an odd choice. And once again, I don't feel like they committed to the circle theme.
Right. But what I like though is that I can actually think of kids like doing this out on the playground where it's like, oh, I'll be the strong man and you can be the clown and you can be the tightrope walker and all that stuff. Just like the way that Dane and Matt were helping Alicia, Humpty Dumpty to practice on the tightrope. It's like I can see kids like pretending and pretending that type of situation of like, oh, practicing and all that.
Sure.
So I'd say it definitely holds up. And the overall performance of everyone in this episode, definitely one of the better ones. It's definitely good if I have like strong feelings about certain characters and how they're behaving in an episode. Matt melted my heart with how he liked his face paint, and Alicia kind of bothered me when she said, oh, I can't do this.
Yeah. And the strong man was fun I thought he was funny when he had the little, the muscles put into his shirt.
Right, Dane.
reactions,
And
too.
he was laughing about it because even though it looks silly, it's like, yeah, this totally works.
Yeah.
Well, he was laughing at himself of how
Yeah.
silly it looked, but he was going along with it. So overall, Circle Circus still holds up. So any last minute thoughts or anything you'd like to plug? Yep, Jeff.
Well, thanks for having me on. This was an education for me. As I said, I'd never even heard of the show before. So thanks for introducing it to me. It's always good to learn new Disney things. And if anybody enjoys Disney and, don't really focus on kid shows, but if you're into the Disney history and theme parks and stuff like that, I do tons of episodes and interviews over at DisneyCoastToCoast.com.
That's Disney with a Z. coasttocoast.com. Make sure to leave a comment if you like what you hear. Why not subscribe? I'm on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Send all comments and feedback to theboxcutter@gmail.com because it takes a village to raise something beautiful. In the words of Tony and Vivian, so long, farewell, until we meet again.